The more fluid you are in accessing the various facets of yourself, the better you are at relating to others appropriately or spiritually in any given moment. So I have a story. A husband was sitting on the side of the bed watching his wife, who was looking at herself in the mirror. And since her birthday was not far off, he asked her, what would she like as a gift? I'd like to be 8 again, she replied, still looking in the mirror. So on the morning of her birthday, he rose early and he made her a big bowl of Cocoa Pops. And then he took her to Adventure World theme park, and what a day they had. He put her on every ride in the park, the death slide, the wall of fear, the screaming roller coaster, everything there was. 5 hours later, they staggered out of the park. And her head was kind of reeling, and her stomach felt upside down a bit. But then he took her to McDonald's, where he ordered her a Happy Meal with extra fries and a chocolate shake, and then it was off to a movie with big butter popcorn, a soda pop, and her favorite candy, M&Ms. What a fabulous adventure. Finally, she wobbled home with her husband and collapsed into the bed exhausted. And he leaned over his wife with a big smile and lovingly asked, well, dear, what was it like being 8 again? And her eyes slowly opened, and her expression suddenly changes, and she said, I meant my dress size, you idiot. Almost killed her, right? But anyway. So last week I talked about our first pillar of personal well-being, and I think one of the first things is don't try to be younger than you are. But today the second pillar is about relationships. So don't you just love people? One of the constants in life is people, everywhere, people. You know, from the moment you're born, we're in relationships with other human beings, but also with other creatures and with the universe itself and with ourselves, as Susan pointed out. We spend our entire lives working on finding the correct position to maintain in each relationship, and our goal is always to be our best selves. And just to be clear, we are our best selves when we are living the qualities of our soul out loud. It is when we are at peace, when we are feeling joyful, strong, poised, confident, connected to our lives and to others in a positive way. That's when we're living as our best selves. And I always say that the quality of our lives is reflected in the quality of our relationships. So the road of life continues to give us opportunities as we go to strengthen this pillar of relationships, doesn't it? We learn as we go through trial and error what we value personally and how to connect with others who live those same values, and with people who challenge us to deepen our own values. It's a balancing act. And we might think of it as every relationship you have either strengthens or weakens this pillar upon which you build your life. So this pillar involves building strong communication skills and learning to honor the power of our words when we speak them with others. And along the way, we choose how much conflict we are willing to tolerate as we seek greater peace with the relationships that we have, and therefore how to build better boundaries and bridges as the need arises. And again, as you look back on your own journey that brought you to this point, you're going to see thousands of instances where you continue to develop this particular pillar. And you're going to be able to see how you've grown in your ability to spot your developing edges in this pillar. And as with the pillar of personal well-being, when this pillar of relationships is strong and invincible, your self-love deepens, and so does your unity with everyone else. Now, I have taught many lessons, and I will continue to teach many lessons on this particular topic, But today I want to bring back a concept I've taught before because it is foundational to understanding relationships. You know, I started this lesson with a joke about a woman looking in the mirror. How many of you have heard the wisdom that all relationships are a mirror? Have you heard that? Well, I don't know about you, but that was a little baffling when I first heard that. I'm like, I don't get it. But I've chewed on this concept for several years, and I want to share some pieces of truth that I've discovered about this idea that relationships are mirrors. So first of all, let's talk about the qualities of a mirror. So we all know that a mirror is a surface that reflects back to the observer itself, right? So many different things can serve as a mirror. I found that if I can't find an actual mirror, a nice still body of water will do. Or how about your car window? You know, you can kind of see yourself. It's kind of amusing when you use your cell phone on selfie mode to look at yourself in the mirror. That'll do, right? Sometimes you just have to you got to look at yourself. You got to find a way. You know, but other people can serve as reflective mirrors as well, especially those that you can trust to be honest. Isn't it wonderful when you have a friend who's willing to tell you have spinach in your teeth, right? Very helpful. And I actually welcome anyone willing to be a mirror to me in that if you see lipstick on my teeth or whatever, boogie, whatever, just let me know. Help me. Back in my corporate career, I used to have a mirror in a drawer, and someone would walk in with something amiss, and I'd pull that mirror out. I wouldn't say a word. They're just keeping on talking. I just hand it to them, and they just do it. It was just a thing that I had. But we do know that we can serve as mirrors to each other. But is it possible that we're always mirrors to each other? How would that work? So I want to talk about this concept in 3 different ways. One, the truth of facets. I want to talk about facets. I want to talk about energy deposits, and I want to talk about seeing who we are in others. First, let's talk about facets. So I like to think of us as like a gem that has different facets, right? Different edges. And we each have many, many facets. And we show different people different facets of ourselves. For example, you show me a different side of you than you show your child or your parent or your spouse or your boss, right? I get to see a different facet of you. Every person who knows you gets to see a slightly different version of yourself. You may describe the very same incident that happened to you to each of these people, but you change your story slightly depending on who you're talking to, which facet of yourself you're showing to that person. Very normal, very human. Let me just start with a simple situation, see if you can get what I'm talking about. So imagine this. One morning, you're driving to work and you get a speeding ticket, okay? Very simple, factual situation. However, the story of this incident is very different when you're talking to different people because your facets related to the incident and they relate to it very differently, right? And you get to decide which facet of yourself you're going to tell your story to your various audience members. Which facet are you going to show? So when you tell your spouse about the ticket, you might show her your kind of apologetic side. You're like, oh, hey, honey, I hate to tell you this, but I got a speeding ticket. It's going to cost a few $100. I'm so sorry, unfortunately. Or you could show her your victim facet. Like, thanks a lot for the argument this morning. You made me late, and so therefore it cost me $100 because I got a speeding ticket. Thanks a lot, right? In both examples, you're talking to your spouse, but you're showing different facets of yourself. Or when you tell your buddy at work about the ticket, you choose a different facet altogether. You're not going to effing believe the jerk of a cop that I ran into this morning. He had a quota and I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, right? Completely different facet, same story, different facet of yourself. If your child happened to be in the car, maybe you would take a more parental role. You might show your teacher or role model side. Son, when you get stopped by a police officer, you have your ID ready, you take responsibility. You know, I shouldn't have been driving this fast. You know, I'm going to have to face the consequences. You take a different facet. Each person you encountered played the role of mirror as you showed them a different side of yourself around that very same instant. You chose who you wanted to be, and they responded to who you chose to be. Get it? So think of the bajillion incidents in your life where you've chosen which part of yourself to show up in the relationship to talk about all these different things that have happened. The spiritual path is about working on polishing your self-loving, responsible, peaceful facet and practice being consistently your best self as much as possible, no matter who you're encountering. Now think about the power of relating to the same character in your life over and over for years. Because over time, you become more fixed in the facet that you show to one person. Your script kind of gets solidified into a role that is usually pretty predictable, and it forms the basis of a relationship. See where I'm going with this, right? The bad news is that the only way you can change a relationship is to change the facet of yourself that you show to that other person. The good news is that you have the power to change a relationship by changing the facet of yourself that you show to them. It's kind of a double-edged sword, responsibility for yourself. You can only change yourself, but you have great power in changing the relationships around you because they are indeed mirrors. The other good news is that the more fluid you are in accessing the various facets of yourself, the better you are at relating to others appropriately or spiritually in any given moment. See what I mean? So once you have shown a certain facet of yourself enough times, you begin to expect me to be who I've shown myself to be, right? And you begin to prepare for the arrival of the me that you know. And when I show up in an unexpected facet of myself, it can really change the pattern of a relationship. But when I turn a new side of myself to you, you change your facet you show to me. Therefore, the mirror must reflect who I show up to be. And you can change any relationship by simply showing up in a new way. Try it. Try it. Everyone's reflecting back to you how you are showing up because everyone is a mirror. And the goal is to seek people who reflect your soul, the most poised self, back to you. Facets. Fascinating. The second bit I want to talk about is the idea that you're always, always really in relationship with yourself, even though you seem to be relating to another. And this is one way I think how this works. So a few weeks ago, I spent time with a friend I met years ago. And the minute I saw her, I'm going to call her Jackie, I had a thought about Jackie, and this is what begins the relationship. So when you meet someone, you have a thought about them. And sometimes for me, the first impression of a friend is the one that stays with me throughout the relationship. And sometimes the first impression is allowed to give way to new impressions. As time and circumstances evolve that friendship, the impressions begin to change. Nonetheless, I started with a thought, and I continue to have thoughts about Jackie, right? I think of these thoughts as tiny energy deposits I am making into Jackie. They're my energy drops that I am depositing into this other field of possibility that I call Jackie. They are my energy. So in this example, I actually instantly adored her. And I think she's smart and funny and wise and enjoyable. And since those are the kinds of thoughts that I'm having about Jackie, I've made choices and formed beliefs about her. And every time I see her, I am actually coming into contact with energy that I deposited into the idea of Jackie. And I love being around her. And if I found out she's going to a thing, I want to go to a thing too, because I like visiting the energy that I have deposited into her. And we all have Jackies in our lives and we love them, right? You can think of your own Jackie example. But let me also admit that I met a call. You're like nudging your Jackies around you, right? I'm going to call this colleague Anne, right? So for whatever reason, I just really didn't instantly connect with her. And the negative first impression could have been a zillion little imperceptible things, but nonetheless, I instantly kind of felt friction between us. And I made an instant decision, she's not my peep. She's not my peep, right? I made similar tiny energy deposits into the field of possibility that I call Anne as I have thoughts about her. That she's condescending or judgmental or aloof or rude or whatever it is. Every time I see her, I'm actually coming into contact with the energy that I deposited into the field of Anne. Get it? I don't like being around her. I avoid her, actually. And I've warned others to avoid her too, right? Please tell me you can relate to having an Anne, right? Don't bump them right now. That's not a good. But of course, most people are more complicated than Jackie and Anne, right? Most people you interact with, significantly anyway, are getting a mixture of your energy deposits from you as you think and believe things about people. There are love energy deposits and there are also fear energy deposits. I like him, but I don't trust him. Can't quite figure this guy out. Sometimes he's cool, sometimes he's not. I resonate with this part of her, but there are other things that kind of irk me. You know, there are drops of acceptance, there are drops of judgment, love, fear, fear, love. You're depositing a mixture of energy drops on all people. Here's the deal. Every time you come into the presence of another person, you're visiting your own energy that they represent. You're going up to the person and looking into the mirror of your own thoughts and beliefs and feelings. In other words, you are experiencing the communication you have put out onto those wires associated with your personal powers. Remember your personal powers, your thoughts, your feelings, and your choices. You're interacting with them. So think about the people you dread seeing. They are the people you've been having hard thoughts about or gossiping about or secretly despising. We don't like to look into the mirrors of our own judgment and fears and loathing. Those aren't fun mirrors to look into. But think about the people you can't wait to see. They are the people you've continued to have love energy drops from a distance. And every time they come to mind, you have a positive, affirming thought. You can't wait to visit the energy that they're holding for you. It's a lovely mirror to gaze into. So healing a relationship is about cleaning up the energy you left in a person and changing your deposits to energy drops of love and acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude. Everyone is a mirror that shows you the you that you left in them. And sometimes the best thing you can do is exit the relationship both literally and energetically so that you no longer make energy deposits related to them. Get it? So the third concept about mirrors I want to discuss is the reality that mirrors can only reflect back what you are. Okay? In other words, you can't blame or credit the mirror for what you see. You have to realize that it is impossible for a mirror to do anything other than reflect. We must own what we see in the mirror. So someone once said, if you want the reflection in the mirror to change, you don't put makeup on the mirror itself, right? That doesn't really work. The truth is that all of us are whole and complete micro representations of the macro. Each of us has the full spectrum of possibilities within ourselves. There is not a person alive who has in them anything that is not within you too. Let's unpack that truth a little bit because that's a hard one, right? So each of us are human and each of us are divine. We're a glorious mixture of human and spiritual. And all qualities of the human spectrum of possibilities lie dormant within us, and all qualities of the divine spectrum of possibilities are in dormancy within each one of us as well. That means that within each of us is the same possibility of darkness and light, of truth and deception, of generosity and greed, of creation and destruction. Take a deep breath. Within each of us lies all the choices of behaviors and traits. We each have a vast capacity to love magnanimously and to hate ferociously. We each have the possibility of affirming life and creating life, but also destroying life. And the big reality is that we each have the power of choice as to how we show up, and how we show up is reflected in the people around us. I believe it is our purpose in this lifetime to hone our craft of being human. We are here with billions of other people serving as our mirrors, and we learn to be better at being human and spiritual. It's our purpose to spend this life learning to express out into form our highest expression of God. Every person is on the path of awakening to their spiritual truth. Everyone, even them. And many people haven't even realized they have a spiritual true identity. Every person is waking up to the reality that life is about choosing what you think, what you believe, how you respond and react, and what action you take, what emotion you feel. And many, many people are not aware that there is a choice to be made. Can you remember back when you didn't know you had a choice of being different, right? When we watch another person displaying a behavior or a quality that we abhor, we've got to remember they are reflecting back to us an inner possibility we may or may not be displaying ourselves. Perhaps we've healed that aspect of ourselves and we're impatient for the other person to heal that too. Or perhaps we're terrified that the aspect might be about to burst forth in our own lives. Or perhaps we're watching another person show us a side of ourselves we refuse to look at in our own behavior. Or we also may become aware of a person who seems to have an attribute or a skill that we think we don't have. I know you can relate to that, like, well, they're so special, right? You're not special, remember that. We seem to have been cheated out of receiving some certain quality that others are blessed with and we aren't. But that cannot be spiritually true in the concept of wholeness and oneness. We got to remember that as we gaze into the mirror of that special person, that we have the same aspect within ourselves too. Perhaps we haven't spent the time fully developing that quality or attribute, or perhaps it will remain dormant within us our entire life, but nonetheless, it must be in there somewhere. We may not know how to use the tool of that attribute. We may refuse to believe that we have it, or we can be curious about how to develop that part of ourselves as we grow and learn. There's an old saying, if you spot it, you got it, right? There's nothing you can recognize in another person that you don't have within you. Everyone around you is a mirror reflecting back to you all aspects of yourself, and you get to decide whether you believe that or not. Our call is to surround ourselves with mirrors or people who feel true and affirming. So it's wise to surround ourselves with mirror people who can help see us as beautiful and affirming. There's a fine balance, though, because we must not refuse to look at our true image. I believe you have the wisdom to know the difference between doing the work to improve your self-image and thus attracting a more loving reflection, and avoiding the truth of who you really are, by defining yourself by wisdom that is available to you but might not feel flattering. So we all have relationships that serve us for different periods of time. We've all heard that. Some are for a reason, some are for a season, and some are for a lifetime. And I think the relationships that are there for a lifetime are the type of reflective relationships that we gaze into over and over and over again. Parents are usually in that category, spouses, children, cousins, lifelong friends. And these types of relationships usually continue after divorce or death or loss of the relationship for a variety of reasons. And these relationships continue to reflect you to yourself regardless of your ability to look directly into the eyes of that mirror. Lifetime mirrors tend to serve as you look at your old stories and major life things. My prayer is that here in this community, We can be willing to play the role of mirror to each other consciously. Here in this room, in these friendships and connections, we can find a willingness to look at our unhealed and undeveloped aspects and see them in the eyes of another's love and unconditional acceptance. The pillar of relationships grows brick by brick as we master the art of mirror gazing, and from the reflections we see, gleaning opportunities to change the things we wish to change and accept ourselves in the process. It truly does continue our entire lives. I want to close with a quote from Ernest Holmes about mirrors, and this will serve as my closing prayer this morning. He writes, "The mirror is simply something that reflects. You cannot scratch the reflection out of the mirror, but you can change the image in front of it. And you are the image maker. So let us create new images which will reflect new patterns. And we must be definite in our conviction and deliberate in our aim if we expect happy results. For theories are no good unless they are applied." Ernest Holmes. And so it is.